Hey YouTube, Epidemic 2020 here again. Today I'm going to be responding to TheoreticalBs. He's an intelligent atheist here on YouTube and his videos are really entertaining, so feel free to check out his channel here. Now to quote him, the purpose of his video is to show why I think a certain atheistic argument is crap and what I think it should be replaced with. Now in the first half of his video, he attacks the idea that God's omniscience somehow limits our free will. And I'll have to say I've dealt with this argument a couple times here on YouTube, and I can safely say that TheoreticalBs refutes this argument much better than I have. If you've ever held this argument or tried to refute it, be sure to check out the first half of his video, because it's really good. Now in the second half of his video, he presents a different argument against God, which he feels is more persuasive. Now I think this argument is actually just a more complex version of a much older argument that's been abandoned by most of the atheistic community, or at least intellectual atheists. So I'm going to refute the older argument first and then address his new argument. Now it used to be common for people to ask, can God make a rock so big he cannot lift it? Now if you break down this question, it's really asking, can God do something he cannot do? The question itself is logically contradictory. If God can do anything, he can lift anything, and therefore it is impossible for a rock to exist which he cannot lift. Being all-powerful should not include the ability to do the logically contradictory. Now, Christians talk about God as being the greatest possible being, or as my religious studies professors like to say, God is maximally great. Now, if God is going to be the greatest possible being, then it should be impossible for God to do something which limits the base characteristics which make him maximally great. Now, his base characteristics would include things like being eternal, being sinless, being perfect, being all-knowing, and being logical. It should be expected that, if God is eternal, he cannot cease to exist. If he's all-knowing, he cannot fail to know something. If he's sinless, he cannot sin. The only real limitation God has is that he doesn't have the ability to fail. He cannot fail to be logical. He cannot fail to be good. He cannot fail to exist. He cannot fail to know something, and he can't fail in general. And I don't know, but not being able to fail just doesn't seem like a real limitation to me. And if God did the logically contradictory, he'd be failing to be logical. Now TheoreticalBs argues that God cannot be omnipotent and omniscient at the same time. He's basically saying that because God is omniscient, he knows everything. And because he's omnipotent, he can do anything. But what he cannot do is fail to know what he was going to do, or do something different than what he knew he was going to do. Now, as I said earlier, I agree with this. God cannot fail to know something. This argument has the same conclusion as the last one. Being all-powerful should not entail the ability to do logically contradictory, or else it would lead to absurdities. Now, since God is the most powerful possible being, his omnipotence must not include the ability to do the logically impossible. Now, some people contend that omnipotence does not include the ability to do the logically contradictory, and some contend that it does. However, this does not truly matter, because omnipotence is just a term. No matter how we define the term, it does not actually have an impact on God's actual characteristics. If we define omnipotence in a way that is logically contradictory with omniscience, this does not mean that God's attributes are logically impossible. All it means is that the terms often used to describe him are not a perfect portrayal of his actual characteristics. Now don't forget to check out the more info section, and remember, God loves you, and so do I.